Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar. Today, we have two wonderful presenters, Dr. Francesca Ferrara from University of Torino and Dr. Flavia Mammana from University of Catania. I hope I pronounced them correctly. These great scholars will talk about online STEM students' engagement and group work at the tertiary level. Thank you, Flavia and Francesca. We are waiting to see and hear your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Should I start right now or should we wait some more?
I think we are fine to start.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you everybody for joining us today. This is our second webinar that we give within the online STEM education at tertiary level project. This project has a research team of 5 people from different countries, together with me and Francesca from the University of Torino, from Italy. There are James, Minnie and Mina from the US, and Janet from Canada. And we are hosting weekly webinars on Mondays, 11 to 1, according to some topics that we get from the survey that lots of you compiled in the past week, and that is still open anyway. You can find some more information on our channels. All webinars will be recorded and shared on YouTube channel. And if you have any question, just please send your question through private chat box to Mina. So, once again, this is our second webinar. The first webinar was last week. It was a beautiful webinar given by James Howard, and that was on online assessment and evaluation, actually more question than answers in online assessment and evaluation. And today we are going to talk about online STEM students engagement and group work at tertiary level. And this talk is actually the result of our experiences on online STEM students engagement and work group at tertiary level that we got in the past month of teaching. Just let me tell you who we are. We both are associate professors at our universities. I'm at the University of Catania and Francesca is at the University of Torino. And we both entered the university as academic in 2007, teaching mathematics for science. And actually, I am more now into the foundation of mathematics and mathematics teaching, mathematics education for math majors, while Francesca is more interested into the introduction to mathematical thinking and mathematical education for math majors. So we definitely do have a common experience in math and math education teaching. And when we teach in our classes, regardless, we try to do STEM within the mathematics classroom. You'll get an idea of what I mean shortly during this presentation. So we come from 2 different parts of Italy. My university is very south, is in Sicily. while Francesca's university is very north. So we basically are joining the whole country right now. And what I'm going to, I'll just go through over the quick change that Italy has to face with. It was January 31st when 2 people have been found with coronavirus in Rome. And by then, we did not really get to know what it would have been, it would have happened. We felt like the problem was more a Chinese problem, like located in China. It was not going to affect us, but in 20 days, 16 more people in Codogno, where this red spot is, so in the north of Italy, were affected with coronavirus. And then it took less than 2 weeks to have university lockdown. So in 14 days, universities closed and waited. And then in 3 more days, the whole country was blocked. What had happened, in fact, this page on the left is from March 9, and it's on the news. All newspapers were facing the new situation. All schools were going to be closed at least up till April 3rd, and in fact they still are closed. And Italian universities have to shift from in-person university to online courses. And we had to face with 2 different aspects. On the one hand, there was what we call efficiency. On the other hand, it's more on effectiveness. Efficiency handles with online platform. Universities had to decide whether they wanted to give synchronous teaching or asynchronous teaching, or whether how much the IT offices had to help us. Effectiveness has mostly to do with teaching. It's something that affects the teacher. When you teach in person, you do teach. You do see your students, and that's seeing them is already having a feedback. You question them, and actually, most of the time, they question you. You can get to see their expressions. Oh, I got it. They might just say that silently, but it's something a teacher would get. Even a smile is going to give a feedback to the professor. But then we had to move online. And what does online teaching mean? What does it involve? What does it change? I'm not going to answer, but these are all questions that all universities had to face with. So from north to south of the country, universities in Italy took different decisions. Some universities left professors free to choose what to use, which platform to use. Some others imposed specific platforms. For example, in my own university, in the University of Catania, we had to use Microsoft Teams, and we are using Studium as a learning management systems, while in Torino they are using WebEx or Moodle, or in other university they would leave professors free to use other things. So back to real experiences, we have to face with two components: our own competence and our own expertise versus new challenges that this situation made us face. Digital literacy, new digital literacy, and our own mathematical literacy. That's where this specific talk comes from, our experience. In fact, actually, we are going to examine my own teaching, because Francesca is on sabbatical, for example, and also her way of making research has changed. She was supposed to be traveling right now while she is not, and her way of acting is different. What happened in Sicily, actually? Back to my university. My university counts of 17 departments, plus 2 that are not in town, but they are in the southeast of Sicily. We have more than 100 majors and about 40,000 students. And my university is in my university, we give in-person teaching, and we use Studium more as a repository of materials. It's a repository where we share materials with students. That's pretty much what we used to do up till March 5th. Then on March 5th, we had to move in 4 days. We moved from March 5th to March 9th into an online university, in the sense that we were able to give 1,818 courses online. This is not really an online university. We are giving online courses. So whether efficacy was really great, teachers had to face with effectiveness. How were we going to handle this situation? We had to use Teams at my university, and that was fine. We started trying to learn what Teams was, what we could do with Teams, and you know, especially, I'm a math teacher and I teach math. I've been teaching using especially the blackboard and chalk. So what I thought was to go and look for a writing tablet. Actually, all teachers went to look for writing tablets. On March 6th, when all stores were still open, writing tablets were sold out, as much flowers in grocery stores. You know, everybody looks for flowers now, because you do your own bread and stuff. Well, teachers were looking for writing tablets, and in Italy, you could not find any. And that's on the teacher side. What about student side? Not all students are reachable. They could have hardware problems and data connections problems. Just imagine, for example, one family that has 3 kids, 2 in school, 1 at the university, and maybe not all of them have computers to reach their classes. So what my university thought was to have synchronous teaching. So we are teaching at the time we were supposed to, but we are also video recording our teaching so that if a student for any reason cannot join his class, he can enter his virtual class whenever it is convenient for him or her, and he can check that day class. So we are, in a sense, having synchronous and asynchronous teaching at my university. So in the transition to online education, our question was, what is important not to lose? What can we aim at? And how do we need to change? Okay, so we might find we did try to find some answers in the mathematics laboratory. And I'll ask Francesca to go over it.
Yeah, thanks, Flavia. The mathematics laboratory comes up to our idea of online teaching because we are usually used to use this kind of methodology in our classes. So a natural question was, when we pass from in-person teaching and learning to online teaching and learning, what can we change about our idea of laboratory activities? And if we want to situate the idea of mathematics laboratory as we used it in Italy and we see it in Italy, with respect to our research field, we need to say that this is an idea that recalls hands-on activities and also the perspective of learning by making by Papert, but as a sort not of Vygotskian perspective, but post-Vygotskian perspective, for which we put attention far from the individual learner to the social context of the classroom. And the idea that we have in Italy about mathematics laboratory is an idea that takes care of the method of teaching and learning. So the laboratory is not meant as a physical space, but as a work methodology. And in this perspective, it also recalls the image of a Renaissance workshop, where we take this idea, we need to compare how different the laboratory is from the frontal lesson, for example. Both are work methodologies. And even if both do not require any specific place, the laboratory tries to go beyond frontal lessons that are given traditionally, because traditional frontal lessons are usually teacher-centered, while the idea of the laboratory is shifting attention to students and especially strives to point at students' engagement. The image of the Renaissance workshop is used also to define in our research context what a mathematics laboratory should involve. It should involve people, students and teachers, but also structures like classrooms, tools, but even organization and management, and then ideas, projects, for example, didactical planning, and also experiments or interventions of any sort. And the core philosophy of the Renaissance workshop is a philosophy for which people learn by making, practicing, posing, and solving problems. So if we now shift to which are the focal characteristics of this idea of laboratory as a methodology, those characteristics are made of group and peer work. So it is a method that tries to favor social interaction within the classroom, the sharing and comparison of ideas. The laboratory also is somehow implicating a different role for the teachers, that is a sort of participants in the students' activities, and then holds collective discussions where the ideas can be shared and compared. But the most focal characteristics of the mathematics laboratory are the devolution of the learning processes to students, as I was saying before. One specific dimension of the laboratory is the fact that the activity is student-centered, so that the students can have an active role within the classroom, and then they can do. So we are going to recall that aspect of doing STEM within the mathematics classroom that Flavia was recalling at the beginning, and that we are used to apply in our university classes all the time. This is done practically through problem solving and posing, but also through the use of tools. And it tries to go beyond the simple procedural work for the participants. The part about students' engagement here with respect to this idea of laboratory is based on different aspects. On the one side are those aspects that are much more related to the research view of students' engagement, which relates to the social dimension of learning, the student-centered nature of activity that I have already recalled before, and also the degree of agency that designing certain activities in certain ways and certain interventions in specific ways we can give to tools and materials, so that we can try to have agency more distributed in the classroom and not only associated to the individual learners themselves. On the other side, there are some aspects on which students' engagement is based that are more related to the specific activities that students are doing. Like, for example, the problem solving and posing opportunities that they can have within the classroom, or the fact that they are always acting semiotically some way, so their semiotic activity is very rich, for example, just for their use of tools or materials. How can we then, within this perspective, try to follow certain lines of flight just to reach students' engagement? These are those that are expected from the perspective of the mathematics laboratory as we know it in our field, in our context. So we can favor an environment for exploration of ideas and correctiveness of methods. We can try to foster forms of participation, and then we can ask, for example, for this movement from in-person to online teaching to online laboratory, what kinds of forms of participation we can have. We can stimulate conceptual rather than procedural knowledge, and we can use, for example, mistakes as occasions to encounter mathematics, even new mathematics, and as an occasion for discussion also. And this way of seeing and thinking engagement also points to avoiding later anxiety or disaffection from the discipline, which we know is a big issue for many of our students. But we need to think of this anxiety and this disaffection, or in any case, of any aspect that relates to the affective and emotional dimension of a student's learning, we need to think of these aspects as located, as situated responses that can emerge between the learners and their teaching and learning environments and approaches. So there is where the laboratory is going to really act. And then our first questions that started with the idea of thinking of a movement from in-person to online teaching, in-person to online courses, now changes to from in-person to online laboratory. What does it mean to move from in-person to online laboratory? And how does the laboratory change? This is the first issue that we are going to see with an example. And I go back.
So here I am with my experience. It was March 3rd when I entered my second semester class. That was an in-person class, and I walked in my class and I did put some material, some objects, the one you see in the picture on the table. The course, the fil rouge of my course, of this semester course, is geometric logic. And what we do in this course is to go over the concepts of geometric logic together with geometric transformations, using some a virtual environment, which would be GeoGebra, for example. We would go over some mathematical machines that would produce geometric logic. We would also get some issues from 3D printers for teaching purposes. So in the end of the course, students would also design their own mathematical machine. So on the very first day of class, they had all these objects on the table, and we have been playing with them. I just told them not what they were able to do, but we have been just, for example, just looking at materials. Some of them were 3D printed. Some of them were ready bought. Some of them were in wood that I made myself. Some, like this one, the right, is made with the ice cream sticks. There's one in plastic right here. So we were just commenting material. We were touching stuff. There is a lace right here. That's something we also talked about the very first day. And for example, we commented we could draw circles with a lace. Anyway, we have been just on the very first day of class chatting about the course and about these materials that we would have been using during the course. That was March 3rd, first day of class. Here it is my second day of class. My second day of class was never in class. My course the following week was switched on Teams. This is my class. I was meeting my students virtually into this room that is called common room. So we are all in there, and I got lost, believe me. I was almost frustrated in the end. But what I did was also to take a look at what was happening in schools with my children, in other classes with my colleagues. And I, of course, had to organize my class differently. So what I started doing, what I was missing first was the confidence, was the contact with my students. So what I started doing was to have, before starting the class, on each time that I have my class, I would announce that I was going to start just chatting with them. Hi guys, in a few minutes we'll start. And that would imply some reactions from the students, and some other students were, started and usually do start answering to my chat. And we do also have some more shy guy that somehow react by using a GIF. For example, when we start, he would just jump in with, for example, this starting GIF. And so that creates a less formal atmosphere. That is what I want for my laboratory. That makes me feel closer to my students. One more thing I want to tell you is also that they all switch off their cameras and their microphones while I actually asked them to turn them on. And the first time that I did, they almost panicked because they were not ready. They did not expect me to make them be part of the lesson. But starting from the following time, they were all ready, and actually they wanted to show themselves. They needed some contact. So whenever they talk now within my class, they show their faces and they open their videos. Very rarely they use the chat for communicating. They would rather use their microphone to ask. So how does my lesson work? Actually, how it used to work. It used to work in this way. I was posing a problem. I pose a problem and students would solve that problem in groups. Maybe 2 or 3 students together, they were choosing each other. I was not doing anything by myself. So I was posing a problem and then I would give them 10, 20 minutes to work on it. And exactly with the methodology and the framework that Francesca was talking about. I was going into my students' tables group, and I was questioning, looking at how was I going to do all this? How was I going to create this atmosphere on this online teaching? And just talking with my colleagues, Daniela, it came out that we could set up what teams called channels that, for example, in Zoom are rooms, virtual rooms. So what I did was to divide my students in groups of 2 or 3 students, and each group is linked to the students via their emails. So you see here, groups are locked. Only members that are allowed to get in there with their email address can get in, okay? So what had happened is that I give them the problem in the common room, and then I ask them to move to their virtual groups, small groups, to their rooms, to their channels. And in the channel, here it is what it happens. They work together, and one of them would share the screen, all of them would look at the screen and they work on the problem. Here I am on the right, because as a professor that is hosting the class, I can jump in each channel. So I would question them, I would talk to them. We actually get to laugh each other, laugh together. But the most surprising thing is that I learn, for example, a lot of mathematics, because I give them a problem. As it often happens, you give them a problem and they find something else. That's exactly what it happened here, for example. I posed a problem with the intention of finding some similarities or properties of some triangles, and they came up with a properties of an hexagon that is a beautiful hexagon property. And that's what we are going to work next time, on a property that they found out virtually, but working all together. That was really nice. So going back to my class and going back to my children's experience, they do not take a 60 minutes class in schools, because it's harder to be online other than to be in presence for 60 minutes. And my students as well, they could not stand for 2 hours straight. So what we are doing now is at the end of the class, oh no, I'm sorry. Before that, after we get out of the channel, so we get back together in the general channel. And what we do is to have what they have found written on a OneNote file. So what you see here in yellow is what they have found in their groups. And it's not that I say what they have found, but they explain themselves to others what they have found. So we collect all the things that they found in that 20 minutes lab, and then that's what we are going to work next. What I mean is that for me it's very important to prove or disprove what they have found. And that's what we work on the second half of the class. But in the very end, as I was telling you, we get to relax, because it's hard to be online for that long. It really is hard. So what we get to do is a quick test. And so we get to have a Kahoot. You should know that at least in Italy, actually in the South, in my university or my students, they are about 21, 22 years old. Up till last week, they've never, ever done a Kahoot. That was new for them. Because when they were in school, which means 6 or 7 years ago, that was not in school yet. Now it is, but they are already at the university. And in previous years, they have never used Kahoot. So I did propose them once a Kahoot with them, and they were so excited to get a winner. And of course, the technician guy was interacting also with some GIF. But what I am now doing in order to get more engagement is not only having a Kahoot that is a fun thing or something we could reflect on, I want you to remember these are math majors. But what I'm asking to my students is to send me 1 question and 4 answers for the next Kahoot that we are going to have on the next meeting. So everybody has, everybody knows 1 question of the Kahoot. So there's not advantage for anybody. Everybody will get one question for free. But the nice thing is that we are going to reflect, to think on how to write a question in such a short time, because you do have only a certain amount of space to write your question. And we're going to reflect on, to think on how to choose answers. Because what had happened in my course was that students were sending questions, assuming that everybody would understand what they were asking for. This is not only a competency that a math major should have. So being able to make sure others understand the problem is not only what future teachers should know, but that's more a competency that everybody should have. Being able to have others understand what I mean and what I want to say. So that's also a good exercise for them. And that's pretty much what it happens in my class. So, Francesca.
Yes. So we have seen, before commenting on this slide, I want to add something to what Flavia has just said, because I think with respect to the previous perspective about how we can engage students, we have seen at least 2 or 3 examples. For example, the one that relates in your example, Flavia, the one that relates, for example, to how they come to write together and also to construct some new knowledge while they are discovering new things, also together with you, and not only just transferred by you. You are learning together with them. So you are part of their groups somehow. And we have also seen something that is much more related to the aspect of affection or disaffection, like the start icon from your, I don't know if it was the initial lesson. In any case, it was an initial passage from one lesson from you and one student. So I think that's quite nice with respect to what we are saying here. So now we have posed this issue of moving from in-person to online laboratory, and we have just questioned how does the laboratory change. And I think Flavia gave us some examples about this. For example, again, I'm gonna bring forth the aspect of the writing together or the discovering new properties and things like those when you are also using cleverly your platforms, like for creating spaces for group work and so on and so on. But we can add other questions, I think, to our discourse and our perspective. For example, how this relates to what do platforms and the learning management system allow to do? How a different platform, for example, can change the group work or can change the way you are, for example, using Kahoot for evaluating or testing your students somehow, knowing where they are during the lesson. And especially, and this is a very big, I think, question that deserves more investigation. How can we rethink and organize our lessons and meetings with students if we use the Zoom or the platform language so that we are able to engage students, where engagement is meant at least on 2 levels from what we have seen. One level is the level of engaging students in social interaction. So, for example, in group work. But also we can engage our students in terms of motivation. So if we accept this as quite wide questions that might be explored, for example, in this moving from in-person to online laboratory, then we need also to reflect on all the aspects that are shown on the right side of the slide. That is, what are our new design principles? What are or what can be new kinds of activities to shift the usual in-person activities, and not simply to evoke them, so to make them meaningful in a new learning and teaching environment. And which kind of new kinds of tasks, new tasks we can use to engage our students. And finally, how all of this is changing our practice and how we can discover new kinds of practice. So we were saying at the beginning that the perspective of the mathematics laboratory recalls the idea of learning by making, from Papert, which is quite known in our field. But how making changes? Which kind of virtual making are we doing with our students when we pass online? And can we also have new forms of learning as making? So through the new kinds of virtual making, what are we learning? And Flavia, I think, gave us some examples. And last, final question, which kind of new kinds of assessment and evaluation we can have? Okay, you have reveal our very last slides, the very end. We hope that everything will be good. And this is our Andrà Tutto Bene from Italy. So are there any questions, ideas, issues? You can send them via chat to Mina and Mini.
Great, Flavia and Francesca. It has been so good to listen to your presentation and experience. We have few questions for you that they are posted in public chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a question for you, I think, Flavia. What is Studium?
Okay, yes, a Studium is just a learning environment platform that we basically use at our university, and every professor has a virtual class for each course that he gives, and we can post materials in each class, or I mean, it's really like a repository for each course, where we put classroom notes, or where we propose exercises, but it's more from the professor to the students. There's not really interaction in there. So
another question is, what is a frontal lesson?
Do you want to go?
No, go ahead if you want.
Oh, no, I mean, it's just an in-person lesson, and usually by frontal lesson, we mean an in-person lesson where, with traditional teaching, where the professor would talk about, would tell you everything he knows. Maybe usually with not that much of interaction with students. While here we look more to what we call horizontal teaching. By horizontal teaching, we mean that it's not only this, the intersection between the knowledge of the teacher and the student get enlarged from both sides. It's not only the students that learn something new, but it's also the teacher that gained something, and he gets to know and to learn something new. And this is what it really surprisingly happened to me even last day of class. I was so happy, and it really happens. That's the magic of serendipity, maybe, I don't know. Okay, we have one more question here. I have
well, what is a semiotic activity?
Are you going to answer, Francesca, to?
Okay.
I like the idea that came from your experience in the virtual classroom. How can you interact a big class with lots of students? Well, should I go ahead or you go ahead?
As you prefer.
My idea with big classes.
The order.
I want to share with you my experience. 4 years ago, I was giving an in-person course because my university is not an online university. And my class was with 320 students. I had 320 students all at the same time in person. And I was giving this class into a room for 400 people. Believe me, that was exactly like giving an online class. I did not have any contact. The closer student was 30 meters apart from me. And I was not able to use my blackboard and chalk. There was not that confidence at the beginning. So that was the first time that I was starting using my, how do you call, pen? Writing tablet. But I definitely wanted to have anyway a laboratory atmosphere. So what I have been doing starting then was anyway, what I did was to pose problems anyway and divide them in groups, so not of 2 or 3, but maybe 5 or 6. They were all working together. And each time someone was going to present their problems and their ideas, and that really worked. For example, here, I would, if I would have like 80 students or 100 students, I would anyway make groups. And I would anyway ask them to send me Kahoot questions. I would not have 80 questions, but for example, we can imagine a partition of the class. So every group is one student. So every group would send me one question, which is a group question, or yeah, that's basically what I would do, trying to anyway managing with groups. And I would jump in groups while they are working. Of course, I could not jump into all of them because it takes you some time. And when you go in, students want to talk to you. It's 3-4 students, and they want to talk to you. They want to tell you what they discovered. So you need to make sure not of going always into the same groups. But that's probably an idea that I would try to follow. Are you planning to use the materials in the online classes? You mean, I'm really discussing ideas about that. You mean the one that I show, maybe Julia, I guess, yeah. You mean the one that I did show on, for my first day of class? Okay, yes. Well, so far, I've been studying geometric loci, and all I needed was dynamic geometry system. Now I'm going to use some material, yes, that they might try to have at home. And I'm trying to ask them if they have ideas to reproduce some things. But what I'll do is to give them a virtual machine eventually. And I will ask them to work on that first of all, to understand how it is built, how it is made. So there's a virtual encounter of virtual and physical machines. Of course, they cannot have everything. We can plan, and we can, we'll be doing a small project for the 3D printer, but anyway, they do not have their 3D printer at home. And even if we were on in-person classes, they would have used my 3D printers. So that won't be a problem. We'll work on it, and I'll let you know what I'll do.
So Julia, if you want me to unmute you and still you have question, just let me know, please.
And should I go back to Avi's question about what is a semiotic activity?
Right, I missed that. Thank you, Francesca. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Avi is here still, yeah, all right. So a semiotic activity is an activity that involves some like science, like for example, semiotic representations that we use in mathematics, the graphics, graphical representations or the natural language can be considered like semiotic systems, but also the gestures, so the movements that we are making. So when we have some activities that engage students, for example, in using tools or material, the activity is full of semiotic activity because there is a lot of signs that are used. And I also want to add something about the issue of frontal lesson, because the goal of the frontal lesson usually is teaching by transmission of knowledge, while the direct transmission, I mean, while the idea of a methodology like the laboratorial methodology is much more about engaging students, having students learning by making and discovering and solving and posing problems by themselves. And of course, this does not exclude at all the teacher from her role, but it changes somehow the role of the teachers. Okay.
Any other question, you can write it to Mina.
Or even if you want to have a chat, just let me know. I'm sorry that we had to mute everyone because we were a little bit concerned about the privacy of the webinar. But you're more than welcome to text me and I will unmute you and you would be even able to use your video if you would like to. Okay. Apparently there is no more questions for you. Thank you very much again, Flavia and Francesca. I'm quite sure that all of the participants who are from different parts of the world have all gained some insight into your experience in online STEM students engagement and group work today. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the webinar participants that they have participated in this webinar today. It was really interesting. I'd like also to thank our participants as well for joining into our meeting today. We look forward into the comments and questions through emails, maybe if you have some other question, and follow up that may come from this interesting discussion. Thanks again so much for being part of our conversation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.